Have you ever wondered how artificial intelligence could change the way you connect with your students? Or maybe you're curious about how AI can help you create more engaging content or streamline your communication. On this episode of Student Ministry Connection, we're exploring some practical ways to harness AI and also avoid some critical pitfalls in order to enhance your ministry. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection, a podcast for those who serve in student ministry but also want to connect with others and grow as disciples and leaders. My name is Steve Cullum, and in addition to being a youth pastor for 20 plus years, I also get to serve other youth pastors as a missionary with National Network of Youth Ministries. And as youth leaders, we're always looking for new ways to connect with our students, to communicate more effectively, and to make the most of our time and resources. Technology has always played a part in that, from social media to live streaming and beyond. And it's something that always gets me excited. I'm definitely a tech enthusiast, and I have ever since I was really young. I blame my grandfather, who is also that way. But recently, there's this new tool that has the potential to revolutionize the way that we do ministry: artificial intelligence. And I'm sure you've heard all about AI in the news or already seen it pop up in several different areas of your life. But what does it mean for student ministry? And why should we, as ministry leaders, care about AI? The truth is that AI is much more than just a buzzword. It's a tool that, when used wisely, can help us reach students in ways that we've never imagined. But it also comes with challenges and ethical questions that we cannot afford to ignore. So while artificial intelligence can mean a number of things, on this episode, we're going to mostly zero in on the parts that are more chatbot related, or as they're more commonly known as large language models. AI that's been trained on and is continually trained on a large amount of data that we then can communicate with to get results. The most common of all those right now is ChatGPT. And so today we're going to dive into the world of AI, at least as it stands right now in August of 2024, to explore how it can support us in our mission to disciple the next generation. To discuss this with me, I've brought back my friend Tom Pounder, who was last on the podcast back in 2020 for episodes 57 and 62. Before moving into online ministry, Tom served many years as a student pastor, so he clearly has a passion for both students and technology. We'll talk about practical applications, potential pitfalls, and how we can start integrating AI into our tool belt in such a way that's effective and faithful to our ministry. Whether you're excited about the possibilities or a bit skeptical, this conversation is for you. And after I talk with Tom, I'll share a few additional tips that I picked up recently from my friend Dave Adamson, author of Meta Church and guest on episode 86 of this podcast. But before we jump into all of that, let's pause and thank the sponsors of this episode. Next Gen Ministry Network firmly believes that effective ministry happens together in community. Their fall cohort is an excellent opportunity for you to meet weekly with other kids ministry or student ministry leaders to learn, grow, and talk through the real and hard parts of ministry. They want to encourage and equip you to be a better disciple and to be a better discipler of your kids, students, and volunteers. So, join the community and don't do ministry alone. Jump into one of their cohorts this fall. Head over to nextgenministrynetwork.com to learn more. Oh, and one more thing. Next Gen Ministry Network is offering $50 off your cohort registration when you sign up with your entire Next Gen team. Just reach out to their team to learn more about the discounts and scholarships that are available. Again, you can find them at nextgenministrynetwork.com and on Instagram at Student Ministry Circle. And of course, all those links will be in our podcast show notes. Ministry can be complicated to navigate, especially when you're juggling multiple jobs, roles, or youth ministry gatherings. Student Ministry Connection believes that the best leaders are healthy leaders who are able to lead from a place of abundance rather than exhaustion. And that's why we believe in G-Shade's youth ministry curriculum, With the release of Season 6, G-Shades is your simple solution for a gospel-centered youth ministry. Season 6 includes a year's worth of volunteer training resources, parent training resources, outreach events, discipleship events, and even 2 camps. Their curriculum is laser-focused on helping students see themselves, God, and others through the lens of the gospel, and it shows up in every topic, series, and week. And you can amplify your reach with G-Shade's engaging video messages, whether it's sharing the videos with your digital audience, giving parents a full preview of the content beforehand, or sending them out the next day to catch students up who missed out. G-Shades allows you to extend your ministry's reach, and that's not to mention the benefits of your students hearing the gospel preached from different voices and perspectives. There are lots of great youth ministry curriculums out there, but G-Shades sets itself apart because of a strong focus on the gospel. I've been so impressed with Mike and his team as they've created an amazing gospel-centered curriculum. So head over to gshades.org to catch your first glimpse of G-Shades with a 4-week free trial. And when it's time to buy, you can use the offer code CONNECTION for 10% off their top-tier curriculum. G-Shades, seeing life through the lens of the gospel. You can find the link to G-Shades in our podcast show notes. Well, thanks so much for being back on the podcast, Tom. It's great to have you back on here.
Hey, thanks for having me back on. I always love talking to you, Steve.
Yeah, and I was on your podcast just a little bit ago as well. So yeah, for our listeners, Tom and I talk quite a bit, but we started to talk about this idea of AI, and it's been a topic that I've been wanting to have on the podcast for a while. And something just prompted me, not as a chat GPT prompt, but it just prompted me to contact Tom the other day. And it's like, Tom, like I bet you're into AI and everything. You want to have a conversation about this on the podcast. So glad to have you on here. But before we jump into any of the artificial intelligence stuff, how about you just kind of catch people up a little bit? Maybe they caught the last time you were on the podcast, or maybe this is brand new for our listeners. Who is Tom Pounder, and what are you doing, and what's your ministry all about?
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I am Tom Pounder. I live just outside of Washington, D.C. I was kind of born and raised in the DC area, and I've been doing ministry ever since 1997, full-time ministry. I started off doing middle school, then moved into kind of a youth minister kind of oversight role, and I spent 20 some years. I think it was like 26 years in full-time youth ministry, and I loved it, but definitely at the end of my time I was ready to go on. So God bless you, Steve, for still being in the game. You've been doing youth ministry for a really long time as well. But back in 2014, our church actually started dabbling with online ministry. And they came to me and said, Tom, you're with youth, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter. You want to be our online guy too? And I'm like, I don't even know what that is, man. I don't know what that is. But sure, let's talk about it. And then one thing led to another, and we launched our online ministry, which was basically streaming, and then we had one Google group for Bible study in June of 2014, which was great. I mean, again, a lot of learning, but by the time the pandemic hit, we were well ahead of the game, so we weren't trying to catch up to things. We were already kind of experimenting. We just kind of went a little bit further and said, what more can we do? And so, again, about 2 years ago, I stopped doing full-time youth ministry and just focused solely on online ministry. And I love it. It's just great to connect with people online. You and I have had different conversations about online stuff with video gaming and social media stuff. And so I know you know the value of online ministry and the importance. So, yeah, that's kind of what I do. I'm an online guy. I have 4 daughters, and it's pure chaos, but it's great,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that, our initial connection was online. It was, blogging and stuff for Orange and doing some different social media stuff for them. And then that just kind of struck up a friendship, and we've been connected ever since, which is probably longer than I'd be willing to admit, not because of our friendship being that long, but just because I don't want to admit that I'm that old. But it's been a while, but it's so cool to see that transformation and especially how you guys were ahead of the game, where in so many churches and so many ministries were reacting to try to get online and everything, where you guys were already thinking that way ahead of time. How have you seen the landscape change within online ministry, especially now that you're in it full time?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of learning, and again, we'll get into the AI stuff, but technology is always changing, and so you're always kind of having to learn new stuff and kind of experiment and say, hey, does this work for our ministry or not? But where we've really seen a lot of fruit in our ministry recently is just through YouTube. We've really gone all in on YouTube. We started with the pandemic. Like, we already had like a YouTube presence before the pandemic, but it wasn't anything like, we were basically just doing our sermons or our services. And now it's like we're doing daily devotionals, we're doing shorts, we're really trying to engage with people online, and it's been really cool to see that. But again, one of the things that makes me sad though, Steve, and I think you probably see this as well in your neck of the woods, is that, whereas a lot of people made progress with online ministry during the pandemic, once we really got back into full-time in real life ministry, people started shuttering their online presence and it became less of a influence. And I really feel like there's still a real opportunity to minister to people online that we wouldn't have in person. So I'm glad our church has the vision to continue to press forward, and we just kind of learn and grow and experiment as we kind of go about.
That's cool. Yeah, I found so many. I mean, it was kind of a necessity. I feel like we had to move online, and during the lockdown times, but nowadays it's like we know that stronger and more real connections happen in person. But I think a lot of people have kind of stepped away from technology, and they're like really, really hesitant toward it. So when we think of online ministry or even AI stuff, what we're going to talk about in a second, yeah, I feel like a lot of people kind of have been really, really hesitant and not willing to even dip their toes in it right now because, well, we don't want to go that way and abandon real life connections. When I feel like I'm putting words in your mouth. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like if we can marry those two together, then we've really got where we're supposed to be. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I agree. And the word I like to use is that online ministry is a tool to help you in your ministry context. And again, I never try to promote to say, hey, listen, online ministry is the right way to go, the only way to go. Because that, like, as much as I love doing online ministry, I like the personal connection, the in your face, meeting someone, having a cup of coffee in real life. And so I need that as well. And I know everybody needs that to some degree. And so, yeah, I like to say that online ministry is a real good tool that ministries can use to incorporate into their in real life ministry.
Cool. Well, let's move into artificial intelligence. And so you can get your tinfoil hats on or whatever and be afraid of, all the different movies that have kind of made us be a little more hesitant about AI. But I know there's a lot of different definitions that are tossed around about what AI really is. So from your perspective, Tom, how would you explain what AI is, and how are you seeing it in various ministry contexts being used right now?
Yeah, I would say that what I like to say with ministry is that, I mean, with AI is that it can process a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of data faster than anything ever could, or that you could ever do as a human. It just takes the prompts that you give it, like you could type in different prompts, and it collects all that stuff rather than you trying to look up in a book or even on Google. I find it better than looking up in something like a Google or another search engine. It processes all that information just so much faster and gives you the information that you're looking for. So in regards to how I've seen people use it, and this is me too. I've seen people use it this way, but I've also had people do this as well, is that I see people use it for image creation. You type in a prompt and say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a graphic or an image for my ministry event coming up. It involves hot dogs, it involves a picnic, it involves fun and games. Come up with an image for that. And these apps like Canva will come up with an image for you, and it won't just be one image. They'll give you a bunch of different images that will really be kind of cool. And again, it's helpful that if you don't have a creative person on staff at your church, it's helpful that this can do it for you in a matter of a few seconds. I also see it as, this is what I like to use it for, is like writing prompts. Like if I'm ever writing a blog post or I'm writing a description for something, I will give it some prompts to say, hey, I'm looking for this. And I highlight probably like 5 or 6 different things. And I asked it to kind of spit me out something like 3 to 4 sentences about this, or a paragraph about that, or a blog idea, blog outline about this or that. And it just kind of gives me information that I can kind of sift through and say, okay, good. So it's almost like it helps you with writer's block. If you're having trouble coming up with something, for your website or for a description for a flyer, you can just type it into Chat GPT or one of the other platforms, and it can kind of give you information there. I like to use it, like, again, you and I are both on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it. And, sometimes you're limited to the characters of, you can only put so much information out. Well, sometimes I like to use it for social media, where I'll type in a bunch of stuff and say, shorten this. And so it shortens it for me to kind of meet the format. I use it for sermon clips. Like if, I'll upload a sermon onto AI platform and say, kind of give me like 4 or 5 different clips for this. And they will kind of pull out different clips that they thought were important. Now, again, they're not always the best ones. And sometimes you have to change them around a little bit here or there. But it kind of helps you get the ball rolling on it and say, okay, that kind of works out. And then the last thing I've seen people use it for is just some sermon prep. It kind of goes along with a blog post idea. Now, this is the caveat, though. I use it for sermon or devotional prep, but I don't take what they give me. I use it as ideas. Remember, the idea is God speaking to you, and then you're going to share with other people. God's not speaking through AI here. I mean, so again, if you're looking for some ideas or some thoughts, or maybe like an intro story that you could share, that could help you along the way. But sermon preparation is good. Like sometimes I'll type in, hey, give me some Bible verses that deal with this. And instead of looking that up through Google, they'll give me some different references. Some of them are hit on spot on, some of them don't. But those are just some of the ways that I've seen, AI really help me in some of the things I've been doing with ministry.
Nice. That's so good. And I think it's so helpful for us to kind of take that approach as we begin this conversation around AI, because I think there are some negative sides of AI as well. I mean, and we'll chat a little bit about that in a second, but I think when we think about it in those ways, it often will prompt us to stay away from it altogether. We're like, I can't be a part of that sort of thing. But all of those things sound really easy and simple, and makes our lives easier and more efficient in our ministry. So we're not sitting there. I remember when I was in Bible college, and I remembered going through my Greek class, and we learned how to do a word study. And we had to go to the library, and we looked up all these concordances and all these different books. And it took, sometimes my first, time doing it, like an hour or more to do a proper word study on something. And then I realized, like later when I went to seminary, that there's a software called Logos, and it was able to do a word study for me in like 5 seconds, because it was just able to analyze all those books and spit it out on one page for me. And like, this is amazing. Like, it's saving me so much time. And I think if we use AI like that sort of a thing as a proper tool to help us prepare, help us process and everything, it can be an amazing resource as we're preparing.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think the tendency is, again, whenever new technology comes out, you always got to be a little bit suspect, a little bit wary, but that doesn't mean don't try it out. Like, again, I will be honest, when AI first coming out and I heard about all these kids cheating on exams and all this stuff, I'm like, dude, I want nothing to do with it. But then one day I was trying to come up with a blog idea, and I was like, what am I going to write about? Like, I have these thoughts, and I just typed it in, and I was like, holy cow, this is pretty cool what it spit out. And it really helped me. And so then I've just been kind of experimenting a little bit more with it. And whenever I have like a writer's block, it's a good thing to kind of just throw up there and see what happens, and maybe God will use it in some way that I can kind of develop something from that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about like engagement and communication. I think when we talk from ministry standpoint, I was actually just talking to a youth pastor earlier today, and a lot of times we think of our ministries as our programs, but our ministry is so much bigger than our programs. It's that ministry that we do to those students, those families, how we actually engage with them. So is there any ways that AI can actually help us when we're focusing on engagement and communication with those families and those students?
Yeah, I mean, you know this, and you kind of just alluded to this. Again, student ministry in particular, you need to go out and be with people. You don't need to be spending hours upon hours, figuring out how to do your best email or best newsletter or social media post. Like, you're not getting paid to do that. You're getting paid to go spend with kids and be with them. And so anything that can help you save time is always just something that can be really good. And that's why I feel like AI is really helpful for student ministry leaders. And I think about it in regards to communication. I'm thinking, like, again, if you do a weekly newsletter, put something in the AI and see what AI can kind of come out with. Again, what AI is going to give you is not the way that you would phrase it, Steve, or the way that I would phrase it. You'd have to go through it and shift through it and say, hey, what am I really trying to communicate here? But maybe it helps you get an email going out, and it also helps you with proper grammar too, because let's just be honest, again, student ministers are paid to hang out with kids, not to be grammar specialists. And too many times I've gotten just hit, people are like, hey, your grammar's wrong here. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, dude, but your kid loves Jesus, so whatever. but the reality is, if you're doing an email newsletter or any kind of newsletter, social media post, this kind of really helps you come up with some engaging things that you can do. But the other thing that I've really discovered that's helpful for is if you could use it as some kind of discussion prompts that you can give to families. Like, again, if you have a theme that you're going through that you're really encouraging families to kind of go about, you can ask AI to help you with some fun prompts that will be geared towards families. And again, you can do it age specific. If it's younger kids, you put that in the prompt, and they'll spit you out some questions that you can use to engage with families. I really found it that they're really good discussion questions that I wouldn't have thought of because my mind is just so all over the place. It really kind of gives you some good prompts that you can go with. And again, it's a starting point. It's not what you send out, but it's a starting point that will help you get that end product to the families or the people that you're trying to engage with.
That's really good. Yeah, I love being able to, just run things through it. And I know very soon, like, we're going to have it built into a lot more things. Because right now, it kind of has to be an additional step in a lot of ways. You can use things like Grammarly that may be built into your browsers and stuff like that. But I know the new Apple iOS 18 is going to have it built into the system level. Things like that are going to be so much easier to like be able to shorten, what you're saying, or expand on different things, run through your grammar. All those different things are going to be so much easier to do rather than taking that extra step, which is going to be really helpful. I love also, you talked about using it for discussion questions. I've definitely done it several times. Like, hey, here's what I'm talking about. Give me a few ideas. And I won't go with all of them, but it gets me thinking outside the box, and some good questions will come about from that.
I mean, again, a lot of the people that are probably listening to your podcast right now, they might be part-time or bivocational student ministers. Again, we don't have a lot of time to be spending around figuring all this stuff. Time is really money. Time is effort. And the reality is, if you can just throw something in the Chat GPT or Claude AI, those are free, by the way. You throw it in there, you can really get some good ideas going, and it'll save you time.
Absolutely. Yeah, so thinking of saving time, I hear all the time people are asking, youth pastors especially are asking, what's some good curriculum that is out there. So some, you might fall on different sides of the argument. Some people love using curriculum for the time saving aspect of it. Other people are like, no, I've got to write my own stuff. So if you are creating your own content and you're trying to curate what's out there already, how can AI help you do that? You've already kind of alluded to with discussion questions and things like that, but what are some other ways that we can use ChatGPT or other AIs to help us when we're creating content?
Yeah, well, when we're creating content, again, I think if you have a general idea of where you want to go, and say, hey, let's pick a topic about family dynamics. You can say, hey, what are 5 different topics that deal with family dynamics that I can talk about? And then they'll come up with 5 different topics. You can pick and choose whether you like them or not. If you don't like them, you can pick the ones that you do like and then run with some other ones. But then what you can do is that you can say, take that one, lesson that you thought was good about dynamics between a father and a son. And you can throw that in there and say, hey, AI, what are some Bible verses that talk about family dynamics between a father and a son that I can use in a lesson? And then they'll give you some different things. Okay, then you can even go further. What are some questions I can ask from this passage that will help me engage fathers and sons? And it goes, so you can keep on getting a little bit more specific as it kind of spits out answers. And as you you start at the top of the funnel and you're kind of narrowing it down to where you ultimately want to be. And again, it's just a great kind of spitball activity that you can do as you're kind of developing the curriculum and developing what's good for your group.
That's good. Yeah, I've often heard it said to use AI kind of like an intern.
Yes,
you're kind of working with that AI assistant, the chat model or whatever, as an intern. You're not just going to throw things at them and just go with whatever they say, but you're going to be kind of work it down and eventually get there. Yep. I love that and everything. But as we're thinking through things, a lot of people are going to have this question: what are some ethical considerations, though, when using AI, especially when we're creating sermons, creating lesson outlines, things like that? We want to make sure that we're not crossing any ethical boundaries or whatever. So what are some things we got to keep in mind?
Well, obviously, you do not want AI writing your sermon for you. I mean, again, the messages that you communicate, whether it's in a short devotional or a longer form message, even the Bible studies that you're doing, you want it to be a tool for you and for your research, not the writing thing. So again, anytime you use it as a way to just communicate God's word, you're basically asking the computer to generate your lesson for you. And again, we want God's word to come through us to go to them, and that we're praying about it and we're really processing it too. Again, it's not like you're teaching a class about, how to read a book. You're really talking to them about how to grow in their faith, and you want that to come from God and God's direction. So anytime that you're kind of using it as the end all be all with your sermon, I think that goes really a little bit too far.
Yeah. And I think I've heard it said too that every church and every ministry needs to have some sort of AI document that says here's how we are going to use it as an organization or whatever too. And so I think there's plenty of resources out there to help you kind of craft that, and maybe even use AI to help you craft it, but to have some sort of ethical boundaries in place for your organization so that this is how we're using it and this is how we're not going to use it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So thinking of challenges and limitations, if we do think of AI, ChatGPT as an intern, there's going to be some challenges and limitations for even an intern. So what are some different challenges or limitations that you found when using AI, specifically for ministry?
Yeah, if you're not specific with it, again, the great thing about AI is that you can get really, really specific with what you want it to spit out. But if you're not specific with it and you just give it some general parameters, you're not going to get what you're looking for. And so I think the more specific you can get about what you're looking for, the better the results are going to be, and it's going to kind of be able to help you take that next step. The other thing is that, depending on what kind of church you are, they may give you more liberal content or more conservative content than what you're looking for. And so again, depending on what your church background is, you have to be, again, really specific that you cannot use Like, you have to know that the source is not exactly coming from the source that maybe your church is comfortable with. So you have to really kind of cycle it through and make sure that it fits. What's being spit out to you is fits with your theology and what's going on with your church. Because I've kind of searched some different things on AI, and I'm like, yeah, this would not fly at my church. And so you really have to say, okay, well, like that clean, I got to get a little bit more specific. So it's still growing, it's still learning. And again, I think that's the beauty of this technology. We're still very much on the very beginning parts of it. And even though this is like anything with technology, any kind of new technology comes out, you've seen this many times, Steve, too, is that there's always the experts on there and like, hey, I know how to use AI the best way. Listen, we're all just learning. There are no experts on this because we're just all learning more and more. When the next new thing comes out, they're going to ditch AI and go to something else. But the thing is, AI will continue to get better because it's still very much in the very beginning stages of things. And so it will get more refined. And so that's something that we have to look forward to. Will it take over the world? Maybe, but it will never. Here's the deal that I always like to say: it'll never take over the role of a student minister, because the goal of the student minister is to be relational and to be with people. This is a tool that will help us with some of the research that we need to do, or some of the other things that we need to do that takes time away from us spending with kids.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, to remember, it's a tool. Just like a lot of other things are a tool, don't rely completely on it as well. So with us all being novices, we're training the AI as much as we can to kind of give us the right stuff. Where can we go for training though? Like, say a youth pastor is like, okay, I've holding back for a little bit, but I've heard Tom and Steve talk about this. Okay, I'm ready to dip my toe in this, but I want to learn a little more. How can we actually grow and be trained and educate ourselves in AI?
Yeah, one guy that really is on the forefront of this, and I love him. He's a great guy. His name is Kenny Jang, and he leads Church Tech Today, but he also works with Exponential, and he's kind of in charge of their AI kind of forefront. And he is constantly producing. He's one of the experts that I go to and say, okay, I know I can trust him because he's a learner and he's talking to people, he's growing himself. And so he's always sharing ideas. And if I go to Church Tech Today at any time, they've got something on AI that's really going to help me, because I'm constantly learning different things from people like him. There's also people like Jeff Reed at the Church Digital. They're also exploring stuff with AI. So it's really there's some people that have been in it for a really long time that I really trust their advice, because they're not seeking to be the experts. They're learning and sharing what they're learning as they grow.
That's good. Yeah, it's kind of a few steps beyond where we are.
Yes, yeah. You're right. Exactly right.
And I love to, like, at least from my experience with AI, especially the chat models and things like that, you really can't break it. And so my encouragement would just go try things, go figure out what works for you and what doesn't work, and what it's able to do and what it's not able to do, and just throw stuff against it and see what happens. Have you had pretty good experience with just trying it?
Yeah. And honestly, that's exactly what you just said, is like, I've gotten so much more comfortable doing it. And again, I've been able to refine my searches and exactly what I'm looking for by just keep on doing it. I use the platform Claude.ai. It's a free service. It may not give you everything that a paid service does, but it gives me some really good stuff that gets me to where I need to be. I use the free chat GPT stuff, but again, I'm mostly on the Claude AI stuff as well.
Nice. So as we think of, like, privacy, safety is always important in any ministry, but especially in student ministry. How can we make sure that, with the use of AI, how can youth pastors ensure the privacy and safety of our students?
Well, again, I think, anything that you put in, they're going to take and use. And so, again, I would be cautious on uploading pictures of students. I would be cautious of putting in names of students. You really want to protect their privacy, because anything that you insert into them, they're going to just take, and it's going to spit out in some other form for some other person down the road. And so, again, you got to be really careful. I think a lot of churches have privacy policies with pictures of kids and whatnot. So whatever you use for your privacy policy for your church, and if you don't have one, you can Google search it, and there's lots of different options for you there. But whatever your privacy policy is for your church, I think you need to have that as your AI kind of policy as well.
That's definitely a good reminder. And yeah, I was reminded about that not too long ago. I think I went to a workshop, and the leader was saying, hey, like AI, especially whatever you put in is now available to everybody to access. And it's going to be pulling from that. So yes, it makes the chatbot better, but it's also, you're giving potentially private information. So make sure you're running that all through there for sure. So where do you see AI going in ministry in the future that we could get excited about?
I mean, I'm just blown away by just some of the stuff that you can do. Again, the image creation stuff is just so fascinating to me, that it's able to come up with some images or logos that you need for your ministry. I feel like that's going to get even better. So maybe you don't need a graphic designer for your church or your ministry. I also think with the video clips, they're able to spit out clips now, but it's going to get even better. The quality they're going to be able to produce and the different formats they're going to be able to produce, along with the transcripts. I love seeing that I can insert a video right now and they come out with transcripts for it. And again, it's not, sometimes it's not verbatim and they miss some things here or there. That's going to get even better as they're able to pick up on things. But I just continue to believe that it's just going to be a good tool for us to have in our tool bag. And that whenever we need some brainstorming ideas, we can go to the ChatGPT and help us out. Whenever we need a newsletter to get started, we can kind of go there and get something started that will give us some ideas that will help us. I love technology a lot. Where it goes in the future, it's going to be really interesting. Will it take over the world? Maybe, possibly. but again, and this is kind of like a final thought type of thing down the road. It's just like, again, you've already hit on it. It's just never going to replace that in-person connection, though. No matter what kind of cool tools we can use it for, it's that one-on-one conversation that you have with a student at a coffee shop or after a youth group meeting that's going to have the most lasting impact. These are tools that will help you have those kind of conversations down the road.
That's such a good reminder. Yeah, use it as a tool, but it's just a tool to help us to really do our job as ministers and pastors.
Yeah, your church, your church didn't hire you for your AI ability. They hired you because of your personality and how you can connect with students. Let's keep that in the forefront of our minds. Again, use the tools that can help you in your toolbox, but use what God has blessed you with as a way to really connect with people on a spiritual level.
Very, very good reminder. Tom, it's always great to talk with you, and I love, your heart for people. You love technology and love to be online and playing around with AI and all that stuff, but your heart for people is very evident. And so if people want to connect with you more and they want to figure out what you're doing, you've got your own podcast, you've got your ministry and everything too, where can people find you online, connect with you more, maybe even ask you some follow-up questions?
Yeah, my website that you can go to is a simple one. It's tompounder.com. There I've got my blog and some other stuff on it as well. And I'm on Twitter all the time. So my Twitter handle is @TAPounder. You can call it Twitter, you can call it X. I'll just call it Twitter the entire time. But yeah, those are the two best places to connect with me.
Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for being on. Thanks for your friendship. And thanks for always being willing to talk ministry and help each other out and everything. And I hope people will continue to connect with you as well. And just, thank you so much. And may God bless your ministry.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. Thank you for all you do.
I love what Tom shared, and I really hope it was helpful for you too. I also wanted to share a couple thoughts from Dave Adamson, author of Metachurch. I went to his workshop at Orange Conference 2024, and he gave some really good tips for using AI. Among them were some tips on how to write really good prompts for ChatGPT or other chat-based AI models. He even used the acronym PROMPT, or prompt, to help us remember them. So as you're creating your prompt, He said to first give the chat bot its P, professional experience. Start with telling the AI model what professional level they have. The R is for review understanding. Ask the AI model if it understands, simply by asking, do you understand? The O is objective. Outline specifically what you want the AI model to do, but keep it fairly short, maybe around 25 words or less. The M is for mimic or model. Set the style guide for the objective. In other words, you can say, in the style of blank. The P is for primary audience. Give a target demographic that helps the AI model understand who this is for. And finally, the T is for task parameters. What are the boundaries for exactly what is needed and what is not needed in this particular prompt? And after we get the results, of course, everything needs to be checked. Again, I recommend giving AI models the same responsibility and oversight that you would an intern or an assistant. You would never ask an intern to do something and not check his or her work or help that intern refine the results. So do the same thing with AI. In fact, I'll let you in on a little secret. I even used ChatGPT in this way to help me write the opening for this podcast and create an outline to structure my conversation with Tom, which helped my prep time go so much quicker. A couple other resources that I would point you to learn more about AI and ministry are aiforchurchleaders.com and churchtechtoday.com. I think both of those are excellent resources for you to learn more about AI and ministry. Well, I hope today's episode was helpful for you. And if it was, would you please do the following? First, share this with someone else in student ministry who would benefit from this conversation and the content. And please rate the podcast with 5 stars or a thumbs up and a positive review wherever you listen to it. And if you'd like to support my ministry with National Network of Youth Ministries, please check out the links in the show notes for ways to join my financial team and my prayer team. Your support helps me continue to, in turn, support other youth leaders through networks, trainings, podcasts, retreats, and so much more. Before we go, I also want to say thanks again to the sponsors for this episode. If you're looking for more ways to get connected, check out the ministry cohorts at nextgenministrynetwork.com and on Instagram at Student Ministry Circle. And if you're looking for your next curriculum, G-Shades is a great choice. Find out more at gshades.org. And be sure to use the promo code CONNECTION at checkout to receive 10% off your order. We've got another great episode coming out in a couple weeks, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. But until next time, be sure to stay connected, and may God bless your ministry.